Growing up as Sophia Reynolds' daughter was never easy. Every move I made, every breath I took, was closely watched and judged. My father, the CEO of Reynolds Enterprises, had already mapped out my entire life before I could even walk. "Emma, darling," he would say, adjusting his perfectly pressed suit. "A Reynolds never settles for second best." Our mansion in Bel Air stood as a symbol of that belief. 28 rooms of luxurious design, each one a display of wealth and influence. But to me, it felt more like a golden cage than a home. By the time I turned 25, I had followed my father's plan to the letter. Graduate from Harvard Business School, become a junior executive at Reynolds Enterprises, and get engaged to Lucas Davidson II, heir to Davidson Technologies, and my father's choice for my future husband. But there was just one issue. I was hopelessly, madly in love with someone else. I met Ethan Collins on a rainy Tuesday morning when my luxury car broke down on the way to work. He was a mechanic who came to my rescue, arriving in an old tow truck with a smile that made my heart race. "Looks like your timing belt shot," he said, wiping his hands on his worn jeans. "I can fix it, but it'll take a few hours." Something about his warm brown eyes and the way he explained everything without talking down to me made me decide to wait in his small garage instead of calling a taxi. That decision changed everything. Over cups of terrible vending machine coffee, I discovered Ethan wasn't just any mechanic. He had worked his way through engineering school, graduating at the top of his class. He could have easily landed a comfortable corporate job, but he loved working with his hands, solving problems, improving things. "Life's too short to spend it doing something just because it looks good on paper," he told me, his eyes shining. Those words hit me like a lightning bolt. For the first time, someone had expressed exactly what I'd been feeling all my life. One coffee led to another, then dinner, and soon, stolen moments whenever I could escape my suffocating world. Ethan never cared about my family's wealth, never tried to impress me with fancy dinners or expensive gifts. Instead, he showed me the joy of simple things: midnight drives by the ocean, picnics in hidden parks, and laughter. So much laughter. For 6 months, I lived a double life. Society princess by day, myself by night. But I knew it couldn't go on forever. The breaking point came during a charity gala at our mansion. Lucas was talking endlessly about merger strategies to anyone who would listen, while my mother paraded me around like a prize showpiece. Sophia will be taking over the East Coast operations after the wedding. She announced to yet another group of socialites. The Davidsons and Reynolds. Just imagine the possibilities. I felt trapped, suffocating. I excused myself and fled to the garden, my shaking fingers dialing Ethan's number. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered through tears. "I can't marry Lucas. I can't be who they want me to be." There was silence on the other end before Ethan spoke. "Then don't. Be who you are, Sophia." That's the person I fell in love with. That night, everything changed. The next morning, I walked into my father's study, my heart pounding but my decision firm. "Dad, I need to tell you something." My voice trembled slightly. "I can't marry Lucas. I'm in love with someone else." The explosion that followed was catastrophic. My father's face turned a deep red as I explained everything about Ethan, about wanting a life different from the one he'd planned for me. "A mechanic," he roared, slamming his fist onto his mahogany desk. "My daughter, a Reynolds, in love with a mechanic? He's an engineer, Dad, and he's brilliant. If you just meet him." "Absolutely not." My father's voice could have shattered glass. "You will marry Lucas as planned, or you can forget about your trust fund, your place in the company, everything. Is that clear?" I stood taller, summoning strength I didn't know I had. "Goodbye, Dad," I said clearly, my voice steady. Walking out of that study was the hardest thing I had ever done. My mother's tearful pleas, my father's threats, and the gossip from the household staff all followed me as I packed a small bag and left the only home I'd ever known. Ethan was waiting for me outside his modest apartment, concern etched on his face. When I told him what had happened, he tried to talk me out of it. Sophia, that's your entire life you're giving up, your family, your inheritance. I can't let you do that for me. I silenced him with a kiss. I'm not giving up my life, Ethan. I'm finally starting it. The next few months were a crash course in reality. I moved into Ethan's one-bedroom apartment, got a job as an entry-level business consultant at a small firm, and learned how to live on a tight budget. It wasn't easy, but for the first time in my life, I felt free. My parents' attempts to bring me back ranged from emotional manipulation to outright threats. They froze my accounts, canceled my credit cards, and even tried to get me fired from my new job. But with each obstacle, Ethan and I grew stronger together. When we decided to get married, we planned a simple ceremony in a local park. No designer dress, no photographers from society magazines, just us and a few close friends. The morning of the wedding, I received a text from my mother. Your father and I will be attending. One last chance to fix this mistake. My heart raced as I showed Ethan the message. He squeezed my hand. It's your call, love. Whatever you want. I wanted them there, despite everything. They were still my parents. So, when I walked down the makeshift aisle in my simple white dress from a department store, my eyes immediately found Ethan. My father stood at the back, looking like he'd just swallowed something sour, while my mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Neither moved to join the ceremony. During the reception, a casual barbecue in the park, my parents made their final attempt. Sophia, darling. My mother's voice was filled with desperation. It's not too late. Lucas would still take you back. Think about what you're throwing away. My father went straight to the point. This is your last chance, young lady. Stay with this man, and you'll never see a penny of your inheritance. Is that what you want? To live in poverty? I looked at Ethan, who was laughing and chatting with our friends, completely at ease in his rented suit. Then I looked at my parents, trapped in their world of wealth and expectations. What I want, I said clearly, is to be happy. Ethan makes me happy. If you can't understand that, then maybe we don't need your money or you in our lives. My father's face turned that dangerous shade of purple again. You're no daughter of mine, he spat, turning on his heel. My mother hesitated for a moment before hurrying after him as they stormed away. Ethan appeared at my side, wrapping his arm around my waist. You okay? I leaned into him, watching my past walk away, feeling freer than ever. That was 6 months ago. We settled into our life together, working hard, loving harder. Ethan continued working at his garage while taking night classes for his master's degree. I focused on my consulting work, building my own client base. We were happy, truly happy, even if we had to watch our spending and clip coupons. But there was something Ethan hadn't told me, something that was about to turn my world upside down again. Everything changed on an ordinary Friday evening. I came home early, excited to surprise Ethan with takeout from our favorite place. But our apartment was empty, with a hastily written note on the counter. Working late at the garage. Love you. It wasn't unusual for Ethan to work late, but something felt different. He had been distracted lately, taking mysterious phone calls and working odd hours. A knot formed in my stomach as my mind wandered to dark places. Was history repeating itself? Was I about to lose everything again? Unable to sit still, I decided to bring dinner to him at the garage. But when I arrived, the place was dark. Ethan's old truck wasn't in its usual spot. My hands trembled as I called his number straight to voicemail. Just as panic began to set in, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Mitchell, please come to 1875 Highland Avenue immediately. It's about your husband. My heart stopped. Highland Avenue was in the industrial district, miles from Ethan's garage. With shaking fingers, I typed the address into my GPS and drove through the darkening city, imagining the worst. The GPS led me to a massive, modern building with sleek glass walls. The security gate opened automatically as I drove, and I approached, and a uniformed security guard directed me to an underground parking garage. Mrs. Mitchell, he nodded respectfully. Take the executive elevator to the top floor. Executive elevator? Top floor? What was going on? The elevator opened into a stunning office suite with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city. And there, standing at a glass desk with his back to me, was Ethan, but not the Ethan I knew. Gone were the worn jeans and oil-stained t-shirt. Instead, he wore an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than our monthly rent. When he turned around, his familiar warm smile was tinged with nervousness. Sophia asterisk, he said softly, using the special nickname he had for me. I think it's time I tell you everything. Before he could continue, the office door burst open, and there, like a scene from my worst nightmare, stood my father, mother, and Lucas Winchester, too. What is the meaning of this? My father thundered, his face already turning that familiar shade of purple. Security said Sophia was headed up here. What are you doing in the CEO's office? You mechanic? Ethan straightened his tie and walked around the desk. Actually, Mr. Hamilton, I am the CEO. Ethan Mitchell, founder and chief executive officer of Mitchell Innovations. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother grabbed a chair for support. Lucas's mouth hung open unattractively, and my father, for the first time in my life, was speechless. But, my mother stammered. You're a mechanic. Ethan smiled, taking my hand. I own a chain of auto repair shops, yes. It was my first business. Started with a loan from my college professor. But Mitchell Innovations is my main focus. We're a tech company specializing in revolutionary electric vehicle batteries. That's what those late nights at the garage were about. We were finalizing our new prototype. My head was spinning. Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to be sure, Ethan said softly, turning to face me. When we met, I had just made the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Every woman I dated only cared about my money, my status. But you, Sophia, you fell in love with me when I was just a mechanic. You gave up everything for me. I had to be sure. Mitchell Innovations, my father muttered, his business mind finally catching up. The company that just revolutionized electric vehicle battery technology, the one every major car manufacturer is fighting to partner with, that's you. Ethan nodded. Our market valuation hit $122 billion last week. Not quite Hamilton Industries territory, but we're getting there. I couldn't help but laugh at my father's expression. All those months of looking down on my poor husband, and Ethan had been building an empire right under their noses. And now, Ethan continued, his voice sharpening, I'd like to discuss how you treated your daughter. The woman who, by the way, just became one of the largest shareholders in Mitchell Innovations when she married me. My father's face paled. Hamilton Industries had been trying to break into the electric vehicle market for years. Having a connection to Mitchell Innovations would have been a game changer. Now, see here, my father blustered, trying to regain control. We were just looking out for Sophia's best interest by damning her. Ethan's voice was steel wrapped in silk. By trying to get her fired, by making her cry herself to sleep for weeks. Daddy, I finally found my voice. You always taught me that Hamiltons never settle for second best. Well, I didn't. I married the most brilliant, kind, and successful man I've ever known. And I did it without knowing any of this. Sophia, sweetheart, my mother stepped forward, arms outstretched. We were wrong. We see that now. Please come home. I looked around the magnificent office, then at Ethan, my wonderful husband who had let me find my own way, support myself, and grow stronger. I am home, Mom. But if you want to be part of our lives, you'll have to accept us on our terms. No more manipulation. No more control. My father looked like he was choking on something particularly unpleasant. And what about Hamilton Industries? Ethan smiled. Well, sir, we've actually had several offers from your competitors for exclusive partnerships. But I thought, given the family connection, We might consider a different arrangement if you're interested in discussing it as equals. The next hour was surreal. My father and Ethan talked business, while my mother fussed over my terrible apartment and insisted we move into a proper home. Lucas had slunk away somewhere, probably to lick his wounds. Later that night, back in our small apartment, I finally asked Ethan the question that had been burning in my mind. Why keep working at the garage? Why live like this when you have billions? Ethan pulled me close. The garage keeps me grounded. It reminds me where I started. And this apartment, these months with you, have been the happiest of my life. We made it on our own, without any silver spoons or trust funds. Tears welled in my eyes. I love you, you sneaky billionaire. He laughed. I love you too, my runaway heiress. Life changed after that night, but not in the ways people might expect. We did move, but into a modest house we chose together. I joined Mitchell Innovations as head of their charitable foundation, using our resources to help other young entrepreneurs. Ethan still spends time at his original garage, teaching mechanical skills to underprivileged youth. As for my parents, well, they're trying. Mom still makes not-so-subtle hints about grandchildren needing trust funds, but Dad has developed a genuine respect for Ethan. Their weekly business meetings often turn into lengthy discussions about everything, from classic cars to philosophy. As for me, I finally understood what Ethan meant about life being too short to live it on paper. Sometimes the best things come disguised as broken-down Ferraris and coffee from vending machines. But the best part? Every now and then, when we drive past our old apartment or grab takeout from our favorite place, Ethan still looks at me the same way he did when he was just a mechanic and I was just a runaway heiress. Because in the end, love doesn't care about bank accounts or business empires. It cares about who you are when everything else is stripped away. And we're simply Sophia and Ethan, a mechanic and a runaway heiress who found something better than billions. We found each other,